Greetings everyone, welcome back to Blade Bias. Today we have a package from Balifleur. Before we get into the video, I do want to give a hearty apology to Balifleur because he sent me this thing, gosh, I want to say 2.5 weeks ago, and I just have not been able to get around to it until now. So, Mr. Fleur, Senor Fleur, Monsieur Fleur, my apologies. I really am sorry. It's entirely my fault. I shouldn't have accepted this thing with how much stuff I had to cover, and I should have waited until I could have given it a proper and timely unboxing, but we're going to unbox it now. So this is a brand new 3D printed plastic trainer. I shouldn't say brand new. It's brand new to me, but this is a 3D printed plastic trainer from Balifleur. It is called the Fleur, Fleur, I believe is the proper spelling. Fleur, my apologies. And it has a very interesting look to it. We'll get into it in just a little bit, but it's got stainless steel weights. It has little inserts that are exchangeable. You can get different colors for them. Channel with washers, T10 hardware, tang pins, and weighs 1.7 ounces. It's a very light flipper. Full disclosure, Mr. Fleur did send this to me for free for the purpose of this video, but any and all opinions are my own. And this also isn't my first time technically taking it out of the box. I took it out of the box and flipped it a tiny bit on a Discord call like 2 or 3 weeks ago. But it was so brief that I genuinely don't even remember what it flips like. So let's dig back in to the Fleur. If it wants to, there we go, if it wants to open for me. So here it is. We have a very nice 3D printed box reminiscent of something from like Machine Wise or BA Bally's. And then this is the Fleur itself. It's full of stainless steel weights, little stainless steel balls that aren't designed to be removed. And then we have this branding on the blade with this very extraordinarily thin blade and this massive flower at the end, which should make for, quite a lot of tip weight, to say the least. But considering how light this thing is, we'll have to see how it performs. Considering 1.7 ounces is not a whole lot, and it doesn't feel super substantial in the hand. Granted, I'm used to flipping my palette, which is finally back in working order since I did a stream with the maintenance. So the follow-up video on this thing will finally be going up soon-ish. I don't actually know when, but again, a ton of videos to make. So without further ado, let's flip this thing. Feels pretty good in the hands. I'd say pretty standard print quality here. The blade is extraordinarily thin, so I think that's like this gets very thin up here. I'm interested not only in the durability of that, but also just the overall weight of that, because there's a lot of steel weights here for it to not be that heavy of a plastic trainer. But let's give it a flip, because that's a lot of tip weight. Or maybe it's not because it's plastic, but like all the weight is... Anyway. Okay. Surprisingly flippable for 1.7 ounces. You hear that and you think, oh, hey, that isn't going to feel like much at all. And like, you're kind of right. It definitely floats. But the balance isn't the worst. I can't even lie. Fanning is a little unresponsive to begin with, just because it feels like, I think the handles aren't really carrying a ton of weight here. It's enough to feel like you have momentum, but it doesn't really feel like they are balanced specifically for fanning. That being said, once you get into the fan, it fans perfectly fine. Just that little bit of hesitation when you do go into the fan. 0G's okay. Yeah, actually 0G's pretty well. Doesn't reverse chaplain very well, but I'm not very known for my reverse chaplains, to be perfectly fair. I can already hear there's something rattling around. I'm not sure what that is. One thing that's actually interesting is it looks like we have the silicone little tape in here that someone like Tay uses to make his ballad songs sound so good. You don't necessarily get that Tay-flipper sound with this thing, but it doesn't sound too bad. Give it a little bit of a sound test for you guys. Yeah, there's not much there in the way of sound, I'll be honest, but the real strength of this guy, I can't believe it's taken me so long to talk about the price, but this thing retails for $35, which is genuinely one of the cheapest plastic balisongs just ever. I think the only thing that comes close to it is something like the diode, which I actually just realized is right here. I have not touched my diode in such a long time. Which the diode is just as light, but it doesn't feel like it. I don't actually remember the exact weight stat of the diode. I think it's 1.8 ounces. It honestly feels much heavier because all the weight is genuinely focused at the ends and at the tip. Whereas opposed to this, they're kind of spreading out the weight a little bit more. I think I do prefer the flipping of this thing. It's light. It feels unsubstantial, but the balance, like I said before, genuinely pretty good. If you were to scale this thing up into a heavier balisong, probably be a little bit of blade bias to it just because of that fanning problem. Not even problem, just that hesitation with the fans and the choker fans. Probably manifesting because there's a little bit of blade bias going on. Or at the very least, just more tip weight than handle weight, which is actually probably... Oh no, I knocked the... I think these are tang pins, extra tang pins. It's either blade bias or it's that the tip has more weight than the ends of the handles, which I know that sounds like the same thing, and I guess it probably is, but that's actually probably what's going on here because the tip has, gosh, maybe 2-3 weights worth. End of the handles only has 2. So it's 2 to 3, 2 to 2. I genuinely don't know. Because I was initially thinking that this was the same ball on either side, but that just doesn't make sense. There's probably 2 in there. Yeah, honestly, a surprisingly competent flipper. Like, it's not going to win any awards, especially in the plastic market now. But considering that it's half the price of any other, like, super competent plastic competition, I think I'd take this over the diode. Again, the diode has a little bit more of, like, a more normal weight distribution, but it also feels a little weirder. It's just plastic balisongs that are so light, I've really kind of moved away from, especially, oh my gosh, going back to the palette. The palette has made, and plastic balisongs in general have made huge strides into getting like more standard in terms of their weight and making them feel a little bit more normal. So this definitely isn't on that train, but going back to plastic sort of roots of being exceptionally light. Not as light as some of the other 3D printed trainers that you can find on Etsy, I would imagine. But I don't have a ton of experience with stuff like that. I think I've only ever tried like the cubed ink one that used to exist. I don't know if it still exists. It might. But yeah, it flips good. It does any trick that you want to. Carries a surprising amount of momentum and only costs 35 bucks. So if you're looking for a cheap plastic trainer, I don't know how durable it's going to be because it does feel to me... It feels kind of flimsy. It feels like this thing wouldn't survive too many encounters with the concrete, but maybe it would. I don't know. Plastic balisongs aren't really meant to encounter the concrete, though, so I won't hold that against it. And, you know, especially with this blade thinning, which is a very thin blade, but it's also very thick, so it's surprisingly solid. You know what? I'm actually pretty impressed with how this thing flips. It responds extremely well for a 1.7 ounce balisong. Like, I can do all the tricks that I would normally want to do on it. It's kind of floaty, carries a surprising amount of momentum. Really the only thing I'm complaining about in my head right now is there's that little bit of hesitation when you begin to fan. It feels like it doesn't want to fan when you first get into it, but when you actually get into the fan, it keeps going. effortlessly. Yeah, a little bit of hesitation in the fanning, but nothing too crazy. Honestly, pretty solid pickup. If you're looking for a little, like a really cheap flipper. I do want to know what's kind of flopping around though. You know what? It's T10 hardware, so where's my screwdriver? I can, I can see if it's properly tightened. That's T8. The one problem with the LDY screwdriver is you can't really keep your bits all that organized, but I still love this thing. Let's give this thing a little tighten, see if it needs it. Yes, it definitely needed it, gosh. Oh, that handle was fine. So the rattling was just a loose handle. Cool. Well, it still rattles a little bit, but it feels a little bit tighter now. Yeah, so that was definitely a problem. I'm impressed here. I know I keep saying it, but I genuinely am. Very responsive for one. I hear 1.7 ounces and I go, I'm not going to be interested in that, but this thing flips quite well. It's 0 G's. Granted, it's because of the weight, but it's 0 G's. It chaplains, it rollovers, it fans. I'm impressed. Now, it probably won't backhand fan very well. Yeah, the backhand fan feels a little rough. Not a ton of momentum to play with there, but you can still do it. Okay, cool. That's a Balifleur. Thank you. Huge thank you to that's the Fleur. I hope I've been pronouncing that right this whole time. I probably haven't, but a huge thank you to Balifleur for sending this thing out. Sorry again that it took me so long to get around to unboxing it. Totally my fault. But yeah, follow-up video in the future. It won't be a week just because of how backed up everything is, but it'll be out eventually. Thank you all for watching. Thank you again to Balifleur for sending this thing out. That was the Fleur, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.